last week, I would say the biggest release last week was Pokemon Scarlet and Violet for the Switch. It came out on Friday, and reviews beforehand were good, but not great. Most would say it was a fun version of Pokemon, but there were some would say slight technical problems, most likely due to pop in and graphical fidelity is what was talked about most in the reviews. But people who were playing Sword and Shield were fine with that, so they were okay. They were like, all right, whatever. If it's fun, great. I'll still buy it. Well, the general public got it on Friday, and the reaction to it has been not very good. Reports and videos of severe pop-in, graphical glitches, and others, and also telemetry issues as well, such as falling off the world into a blank abyss in certain aspects of the game too. Just loads of glitches that have happened with the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games. We normally don't talk about these things in the podcast since we're a business focused podcast, but I think this is a good reason to talk about this. But before we do that, Zero, what are your thoughts on the reactions when it comes to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on the internet this week?
So it was interesting. Much like you mentioned, just the critic reviews were like, hey, it's fun enough. If you like Pokemon, you're probably going to be fine. Yeah, the graphics aren't great. Whatever, no big deal. If you're into Pokemon, and so that was kind of the initial sort of discourse on it, and then on Friday, holy cow, it changed. And one of the posts that I think really, really, really showed the mood of how people felt about the game was the Nintendo of America account on Twitter had posted a post saying, "Hey, launch day is here. What are you doing in the Paldea region?" And it was just nothing but hundreds and hundreds of replies to this Twitter post saying, "And fix your damn game." And I'm just like, "Whoa." Okay, I guess people are angry? Ooh, that's not a great look.
Yeah, it's not a great look. And the thing that which surprised me is that Nintendo games are usually the games that don't have these problems. They would usually delay these games before they release a game that is buggy or has issues. Like I haven't, maybe I'm wrong, but in the 30 odd years I've been into gaming, I have not heard of a Nintendo game that Nintendo made themselves, like Kirby, like Mario, Zelda, that have had these issues before, or have had game-breaking bugs, or had telemetry issues, graphical problems, things like that. They've had games that don't look great. Well, I will say that, but I haven't heard of issue. I haven't heard of people essentially saying your game is broken. Why did you release this? That is what surprised me in this. Now, that being said, technically Nintendo didn't make this. It's the Pokemon Company and Game Freak. But Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have had issues in the past, I would say, 5 years with their games. And it's not that the games had technical problems. It's just that they're not technically advanced enough for the audience right now. So, what do you think is the reason why they had this problem this time when it comes to Scarlet and Violet? Is this a biting off too much, more than they could chew, or what is this exactly?
In my opinion, I think, unfortunately, just Game Freak has gotten a little bit fat and complacent on their laurels from the portable era, because the portable era, for the most part, was just pixel sprites. So it was kind of a no big deal. Just this original Pokemon game, Red and Blue, is just going to be a little pixel thing, not a big deal. So that's how it started, and then of course the next system after that was was the color systems where you had stuff like Pokemon Crystal and stuff like that, and Gold and Silver. So more pixel stuff. So they didn't really have to kind of up their tech or anything. And then you get into the Game Boy Advanced era and the DS era. They were still sort of doing pixel graphic stuff, and it was just kind of like, oh, neat, not a big deal. And I think the cracks in their design really started to show up right around the 3DS era. Just Nintendo's going, hey, this little portable handheld can do 3D graphics, so we need you to make a Pokemon game that's got some 3D stuff. And I surmise that just the staff on Game Freak probably freaked the fuck out. They're just like, whoa, shit, 3D graph, whoa, 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 holy shit. So we got to go 3D now. And of course, just Nintendo's just like, well, it ain't called the 3DS for nothing, so get to it. So I imagine that caused a panic, but they got something scrapped together for X and Y, and then they sort of coasted along from the 3DS era, and they were just like, okay, this is, again, for anyone not in the loop, I imagine this was probably the mindset that they had before the details on the Nintendo Switch were known, and before the whole, hey, there's a rumor and speculation that Nintendo's getting out of making two product lines of hardware. They're going to focus on making one system that functions both as a portable and a home console. So imagine, just when Game Freak had mostly figured out how to kind of do stuff on 3DS, or just like, okay, we got it, no big deal. Then the details on the Switch drop. Hey, we're not doing a separate portable. This will be a home console, and this will be a portable console too. So all of your games can be taken on the go or played on a big TV. And I think that was probably when they got another bit of a big shock of, oh shit, we actually need good art design to make sure that our stuff shows up on a TV. Shit. So, and it's funny too, because I thought Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu looked pretty good when they came out. I was like, yeah, just simplish kind of design, but great art design.
Yeah, I agree.
Looks great on TV. Okay, if Game Freak can, just kind of keep this kind of energy, and maybe less motion controls for capturing Pokemon and stuff like that, and just kind of go back to a traditional Pokemon, great. Would love to see it. Then you had Sword and Shield come out. And of course, Sword and Shield had its own bit of problems. Dexit being one of the big controversies I remember during the launch, which was more from the fact that just Game Freak had really kept things really close to the chest about being able to access all the Pokemon in the Pokedex and everything. So there was that issue initially, and then later the graphical technicalities came out of, hey, look, they're using really low res trees that look like 3DS era trees. And again, fair criticism, because the Switch is a home console as much as it is a portable console. So this should have been a warning to Game Freak, hey, your games are being played on a big ass TV now. You need to step up, either ask for help, do something and improve the visual fidelity, and also just the graphical optimization of the game too. So you have that. And of course, Arceus came out. Legends Arceus came out. Technically, while Game Freak did work on it, they did have some help from, I believe, Monolith Soft of the Xenoblade Chronicles game fame. So they had a little bit of help there, but even still, just Arceus has moments where it chugs too. And then Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, they had their own issues as well, but those were subcontracted to a Japanese mobile game company to do. So that wasn't technically a Game Freak thing. And then we get to Scarlet and Violet, and just now the technical knowledge cracks of Game Freak are really starting to be more apparent now.
Right. And the other problems with the past ones in the Switch, which is was it Shining Pearl, Sword and Shield, and Let's Go. Like Let's Go, like you mentioned before, Let's Go is fine. Let's Go actually looked pretty good. Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond it was a throwback, so that was fine. Sword and Shield, I think graphically just did not look good, but it ran okay. Like I don't remember there being a lot of frame rate issues when it came to that game and everything. But this is the first one where there are severe issues, not just that it looks not great and it doesn't run very well, but people are breaking through the game, or there are bugs that happen throughout the game when they're playing. I saw a bunch of video where monsters are walking around during a battle sequence when they're really not supposed to, for some reason, or elements of the game just disappears and flickers on and off for no reason whatsoever. Like there's just a bunch of technical problems. Here's my question that I had when this was going on. I agree that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company need to get better tech and need to build a better game for the next one. They should have done it with this one, but they have needed to have an update since Sword and Shield. But my question is, do we know that these games are making the most money for the Pokemon Company right now? Like, I don't know exactly what their money making is right now in their games. Like, maybe they're making more money on merchandise or the TV show or the movies or the card game. I don't entirely know. Or maybe more money is being made on Pokemon Unite or the mobile games than these quote-unquote mainline games, as to why maybe that's why they're not putting the money in to improve these games, because it can be one of two things, because A, they feel like it's going to sell regardless, or B, the return on it is not as big as if they put more money into those mobile games or into the card game. What are your thoughts on that?
As far as the Pokemon Company's financials, technically, since it's considered part of Nintendo, I think there's really not clear visibility on how their financials are doing. But in my personal opinion, I think it's more that the merchandising has kind of gained a foot over the gaming side of things. So just things like the TCG, the toys, and just anything and everything under the sun that has been marketed with Pokemon, just the margins are likely so much higher that the games are now sort of a secondary sort of thing. I mean, it's gotten to a point now that the West finally has a Pokemon store online that you can buy stuff from, and even now we're even getting some of the stuff that used to be, if it was maybe about a decade ago, it would be just exclusive to the Japanese Pokemon stores only.
Would it surprise you to find kids nowadays who are watching the Pokemon TV series or getting the toys have no idea that they're a video game?
It would not surprise me, especially since there's not really much of a mention about the video games in the TV show. At least from what I can gather from the more recent episodes and stuff like that.
Yeah, look, for some reason I'm looking at this and saying, Pokemon Go must be the one thing that makes them all the money if it comes to games, because if it were these games, I think there would be much more money being put into them and everything. Or maybe they would, I don't know. Like this happening tells me one thing, and it's that the Pokemon Company, because I don't think this, I know you want to blame Game Freak on this, and to a certain extent, I have to agree that they should have done a lot better on this, but something tells me that they're given a limited budget. People will rightly point out that Pokemon is, I think it's a near $1 billion company, or even probably is like a $1 billion brand, and their games don't improve. They just don't. They don't innovate. They don't do anything different really with their games. Like, yeah, they made it jump to 3D in Sword and Shield, but it's still ostensibly the same game that you've been playing since the Game Boy. My feeling of this is that Game Freak is restrained to what they are given to by the Pokemon Company, which probably isn't. It's probably less than you might imagine, and they're forced to make the game that they have to make, and still try and meet the targets that they want. I think that's also the reason why it wasn't delayed, because Pokemon Company, yes, they're partly owned by Nintendo, but the
Yeah,
Pokemon,
it's a joint ownership between the Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures Incorporated.
right? Something tells me, okay, that Nintendo doesn't have the control to tell them if this isn't if this isn't like in great shape, you can't release it. Something tells me that Nintendo doesn't have that power to do that with this company. Because if they
Yeah,
did, I don't think this would have been released. It's just something.
yeah,
I know a lot of people are going to say all game companies are like this. Once they realize they can sell an unfinished game for $60, $70, $80, all of them will do it. I don't think that's with Nintendo. Because if that's the case, I think we would have had Zelda a lot early, the new Zelda a lot earlier. We would have had a lot of these games that they've delayed 3, 4, 5, 6 times. We would have had them much sooner if that were the case. So, and Nintendo is a brand that has stood for quality for now decades. And when it comes to them, that's their identity now. Even more so than a CD Projekt Red, who now squashed their reputation with Cyberpunk. If Nintendo did that, it would be a much bigger deal, not only with the gaming industry, but also in mainstream press, which is what I'm really wondering right now. Because if Pokemon is as big as we think it is the mainstream press going to get involved in this? Going to talk about how parents shouldn't buy this game because it is broken. I wonder what do you think will happen in that end?
I kind of discussed it this week on my Discord server and everything. And honestly, what I think is it's kind of like a weird inverted version of the Activision problem. What I'm referring to is just how in the beginning, Call of Duty was just was Infinity Ward producing these games just year after year after year, and then slowly as the Call of Duty franchise has gone on, there were more studios introduced to make more different games, and then eventually that idea had been scrapped, and it's just been kind of a hey, now we need to get all hands on deck to make the next game and everything. And now I think we're to the cycle of all right, so we need all hands on deck making Call of Duty games, but we're going to slow down our release cadence to just releasing, just one Call of Duty game every X number of years, but we'll have our major multiplayer product tied to the Call of Duty Warzone brand. So instead of that, Pokemon has been just one studio making stuff. Eventually, Game Freak ended up creating a second studio, and when that happened, I believe that they ended up having one of their B team studios take over one of the main 3DS Pokemon games. I forget which one offhand, but the main Game Freak studio that was behind the previous Pokemon games ended up doing a Little Town Hero, which unfortunately for Game Freak flopped so hard. And of course, just because of that flop, now they're kind of putting their heads to the grindstone, doing just Pokemon games now, and occasionally subcontracting to other studios like Ilka, who did the recent Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond, I guess remasters you can call them.
I think so.
Not
Yeah.
really, yeah, not really quite sure what to call them, but that's pretty much what you have now. But I just think that the studio's just overworked, that they're having to keep this yearly cadence cycle of okay, we got to get a Pokemon game out just every year, and just make sure it's just like clockwork. That way, just everyone gets on board, buys these games, and then just kind of wash, rinse, and repeat. And maybe the teams are being overworked, that they can no longer keep up with the workload. They don't have adequate amount of people doing QA. There's just a whole bunch of big question marks in this whole equation, and that's really what I'm more curious about. If there's just something going on behind the scenes that we, the public at large, just cannot see, that's causing the issues behind the scenes.
Didn't Game Freak do Tembo the Badass Elephant too?
Yes, they did, and that was an Xbox 360 game.
And that bombed too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was also done by the main Game Freak studio.
Jesus. What do we think this is going to do with the sales of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? Is this going to affect it negatively at all?
That is going to be interesting to see because I know one of the articles that one of our friends on the Discord server had just posted up was from Dexerto, and apparently there are reports from people on Reddit saying that they've been able to have Nintendo of America issue out a refund for Scarlet and Violet. And for anyone who knows how stingy the eShop is with refunds, this is a rarity. This is one and truly a rarity. So that's not a good look in general. I think the bigger question that I'm real curious about is, will some of the bad press get to a point that the global Nintendo offices will end up reporting back to Japan with where we have some reputational trouble with Pokemon, and I know Nintendo's all about reputation, so what do we do? Do we, just do you guys need to yell at Game Freak and say, get off your asses and fix this damn game, or what do we do? And that's honestly going to be the bigger question, because it's like you said, Nintendo, typically, if it's something that they are 100% worried about that it may not meet their standards of quality, they will delay the game. They will just say, we just don't think this game is in the right shape, so we're just going to hold back the release. And yeah, it sucks that we have to delay it, but we promise you the delay is going to be worth it because you will get quality from that. I think that's ultimately what's going to come down to.
Okay. I do not think this is going to hurt sales in the slightest. I just don't think so, because there's plenty of parents right now who are buying this game now for their child to get for them for Christmas. So those kids are not either, they're not going to know it's busted until they play it on Christmas morning, or it'll be patched to the point where not many people will notice it. So I think this story will die before Christmas. Now, if the game is still busted before when Christmas comes along, oh yeah, there is going to be shit to pay. And there's going to be a lot of problems, and parents are going to want to return it because it's broken. That's the key. If the game is still broken by Christmas, then you're going to have mainstream articles, and you're going to have all sorts of issues with Nintendo regarding this game, and the business practices of the industry of selling games that are not finished is going to hit mainstream news. And that will be huge when that happens. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to fix the bugs before that happens. And then this is going to be swept under the rug, and it's not going to affect sales in the slightest. Yeah, I also read the article too that some people are saying that they're getting refunds for the game, but Nintendo is not really advertising it or saying that they are issuing refunds to people or what the criteria is. So yeah. I'm not that I want to say people are lying, but we both have dealt with this at certain points when it comes to these companies. You can just get a lucky person who will be like, yeah, sure, I'll refund it for you. And then you'll get somebody else says, no, we don't refund purchases after you've downloaded them. No ifs, ands, or buts, sorry. That it really is a roll of the dice. So I would like to believe it, but if it's not a hard and fast rule where Nintendo is saying, yes, we are issuing refunds, if your game is not working or we're not happy with where the standards are at this time, you will get a full refund if you bought it from the eShop. Until that point, I'm a little resident on actually believing that to this certain extent, or thinking that it will have an effect. But I think I think this will be the biggest selling Pokemon of all time, to be completely honest with you. And because even with these bugs, people who are Pokemon fans are still playing it. It's not stopping them. And that's the thing that blows my mind. I've seen so many YouTubers who do just Pokemon, who do Nuzlocke runs and all that shit, are still playing the game even though it's broken and pretending that nothing's wrong. And as long as those guys are still maintaining a front, I don't think it's going to reach a mass zenith until Christmas, when if it's still broken. But that's my opinion on that.
I think really just it's going to really depend on the response in this coming week to how things are going to be looked at. If this has already sent alarm bells to the Nintendo regional departments, Nintendo of America, Nintendo Europe, and et cetera, then maybe this is getting back to Japan that hey, we've got some reputational damage. Can we get this game fixed? Can you guys work with GameCube to put together some sort of statement saying, yo, we hear you, patch coming soon. And maybe a patch drops Friday night or Friday morning or something.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that fast.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I'm just saying this is like complete moonshot levels of speculation. But let's say that's what they do, and all the bugs that everyone's complaining about now end up just being completely fixed. Yeah, likely this issue will be swept under the rug. And to your point about most people buying the game, both games for Christmas, yeah, just the kids who open it at Christmas, they'll drop it in their Switch console, and probably the first thing they'll see is, hi, this game needs an update, so sit tight while we, just do a system update, and it's going to be version 1.0.5 or 1.6 or whatever they decide to version it up as. So
yeah,
that's most certainly a possibility, and if that gets done, then yeah, just the world will probably collectively forget.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be the key, is the timing of which everyone gets those games. Because only the most hardcore people right now are playing Pokemon right now. The ones that make the most sales, the big sales, are going to be the ones that get it on Christmas. So that will be the key to finding out if this becomes a massive deal or not. Thank you for listening to this podcast segment. The Capital Games podcast is done every week, and we post it on all your favorite podcast apps, as well as segments on YouTube. If you want to listen to another segment, you can listen to a new one right there on the screen. We also do a movie podcast called the Capital Games Movie Club. If you'd like, you can go ahead and click on that and see all the movies that we have reviewed from that point. Thank you for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon.